For more than 70 years, Pakistan's political story has been just tragically marked by this recurring cycle of violence. Power isn't always won at the ballot box. So often, it's taken by the barrel of a gun. So today we're going to trace this really dark and bloody history of political assassinations in the country. So let's set the scene. It's October 16th, 1951. Just after 4 p.m. in a place called Rawalpindi, the country's very first prime minister, he steps up to the mic ready to speak to this huge crowd. He only gets out 2 words, and then bam, gunshots just tear through the air. And just like that, Liaquat Ali Khan, the man they called the leader of the nation, he was gone. Now get this, the assassin was shot and killed by police right there on the spot. So who sent him? What was the motive? We'll probably never know. And that single event, man, it set a devastating precedent. This was the moment, the exact moment that political power really started to slip away from elected leaders. First, it went into the shadows, with the bureaucrats, and then ultimately into the iron fist of the military. So you'd think there'd be an investigation, right? Well, the truth about who was really behind this assassination, it feels like it was meant to stay a secret. The lead investigator, a man named Nawabzada Idazaduddin, he had actually finished his report. He had all the evidence, but as he's flying to the capital to deliver it, his plane just mysteriously crashes. And it incinerated everything, him, the pilot, and every single page of that investigation. And here's the thing, this deep-seated suspicion, it was there from the very, very beginning. Think about it, just 3 years before this, the nation's founder himself, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, died under really weird circumstances. The ambulance that was taking him to the hospital just breaks down, inexplicably, on a totally deserted road. So you have these 2 massive suspicious events right at the birth of the nation. It's no wonder they sowed this profound, lasting distrust that honestly still haunts Pakistan today. Okay, so let's fast forward a bit to the age of dictatorships. This pattern of, getting rid of your political rivals, it absolutely continued. But now it was often done with this veneer of plausible deniability. Let's look at 2 major opposition figures from this time. First, in 1963, you have a former prime minister, Hussein Suhrawardy. He's found dead in a hotel in Beirut. The official story? A heart attack. But his family? They were convinced he was assassinated. Then, just 4 years later, Fatima Jinnah, and remember, she's the highly respected sister of the nation's founder, she also dies. Officially, it's heart failure. Again, her family suspected murder. And the official inquiry report they put together, it was never, ever made public. But then came a death that had absolutely no ambiguity. In fact, many people call it a judicial murder. We're talking about 1979, when the military regime of General Zia-ul-Haq executed the country's first democratically elected prime minister, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. He was hanged on these really controversial murder charges, and a lot of people around the world saw it for what it was, the state basically just eliminating its most powerful political opponent. And that execution, it really brings us to the Bhutto family. Their story is, well, it's probably the most tragic example of how this political violence doesn't just affect one person. It cascades down through an entire family, through generations. So first, you have the father, Zulfikar, executed in 79. Just 6 years later, his youngest son, Shahnawaz, dies mysteriously in France. The family was certain he was poisoned. Then, fast forward to 1996, his eldest son, Murtaza, is gunned down in a police encounter, right outside his own home. And the craziest part? This happened while his own sister, Benazir, was the prime minister. And then, of course, the final devastating blow came in 2007, when Benazir herself was assassinated. It's just a dynasty that was defined by power, and in the end, almost completely erased by violence. And what about the dictator, General Zia-ul-Haq, who started this whole Bhutto tragedy? Well, his 11-year rule ended just as abruptly as it began, in a ball of fire. On August 17th, 1988, the C-130 plane he was on just fell out of the sky. He died, along with top generals and even the U.S. ambassador. To this day, very few people believe it was an accident. Most are convinced it was a very sophisticated assassination. So, with the dictator gone and democracy returning, you'd think things would get better, right? Well, not exactly. In fact, the violence actually got more widespread, more brutal, and it started spreading to the streets of the country's biggest city, Karachi. You started seeing these high-profile leaders just gunned down with total impunity. You had Azim Ahmed Tariq, a major party chairman, shot in his own home. Killers? Never found. Then there was Hakim Mohammed Saeed, a beloved philanthropist, a former governor. He was murdered right outside his clinic. The people they accused were eventually let go. See the pattern? But then there's one outlier, the murder of Dr. Imran Farooq in 2010. The only reason his killers were caught and sentenced is because it happened in London. It's just a really rare case where justice was actually served. And the sheer brutality of these attacks, it was just staggering. In 2003, a religious leader and member of parliament named Azam Tariq was assassinated. This happened in broad daylight in the capital city, Islamabad. Look at this number, 43. 43. That's how many bullets they clumped into his body. You know, some of these killings have consequences that just don't go away. They echo for decades. Take what happened in 2006. A veteran nationalist leader, Akbar Bugatti, was killed in a cave during a military operation. Now, this didn't end a conflict, far from it. It ignited a fire, an insurgency in the province of Balochistan that is still burning to this very day. But then, in 2007, an assassination happened that was so big, it didn't just shake the country to its core, it sent shockwaves across the entire planet. We're talking, of course, about the assassination of Benazir Bhutto. She was the first woman ever to lead a Muslim-majority country, and she had just come back from exile to run in the elections. And this is where the story becomes just hauntingly poetic. It shows you this unbroken, tragic circle of Pakistan's history. Benazir Bhutto was killed by a gunman and a suicide bomber right after a rally in a park called Liaquat Bog. Why does that name matter? Because it was the exact same park where the country's very first prime minister, Liaquat Ali Khan, was shot and killed 56 years earlier. It's unbelievable. And look, this isn't some old history lesson. The list of high-profile political killings just keeps on growing. It's a really stark reminder that this cycle of violence, it is far from over. And the violence takes so many different forms. I mean, in 2006, you had a suicide attack at Nashtar Park that literally wiped out the entire leadership of a political religious party. Then in 2011, the governor of Punjab, Saman Taseer, was murdered by his own bodyguard. Why? Simply for opposing the country's blasphemy laws. And as recently as 2018, a really prominent religious scholar, Maulana Samuel Huq, was brutally stabbed to death in his own home. And you have to remember, for every assassination that succeeds, there are so many more attempts. We're talking about major figures like the former military ruler Pervez Musharraf and Prime Minister Shaukat Aziz. Both of them survived multiple attacks. Which brings us right up to today. On November 3, 2022, the former Prime Minister Imran Khan was shot during a rally. He survived, thankfully, but that attack was such a chilling reminder that even now, no political leader is truly safe. This bloody history is still being written as we speak. So all of this leaves us with one final, really unsettling question. After more than 7 decades of this violence that has robbed a nation of its leaders and derailed its democracy over and over again, you have to ask, when will this cycle of blood finally end? Will it ever?